audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram, where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Great. Hello. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Hi there.
So this week, I'll do a quick introduction of who's here. We've got a few people you'll recognise, someone you won't know yet, and we'll see what happens as we're chatting. We've got myself, Daniel from Devil & Sons Guitars, and also Dave in the UK, Dave from Footstep. Now, Dave's been with us for quite a while, but you're going to have a little bit of a break after this until February, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're also breaking from building.
Well, at the moment, I'm at a point in the guitar build where none of the glue is drying properly because it's too cold. So I'm going to have a break over the winter, and then I want to come back to it. And
your pain. I've got lots of spraying to do, and I'm a bit worried I'm just going to have heaters on all the time. Fantastic. And then we've got Mark Gutierrez and Scott from Bonehead Guitars joining us from Texas. Then you're going to recognise Ray from Tasmaniak Guitars over in Australia. Hey, Ray. Now, before I introduce our guest, I'm going to say there's a reason that our guest's here, not just because of the great guitars he builds, but also because of something that Ray posted recently. So, Ray, I'm just going to read out your post, and Mike, our guest, who I haven't introduced yet, hopefully won't be too embarrassed by this. But he posted this. In fact, I'll put a link to it later. You'll see Ray's Instagram post, but it's on Instagram. As you know, Ray builds 3D printed guitars, and he says there's been a few times I've taken a popular shape and given it my twist, like the Toxic V and the Tramp are prime examples of Ray's builds. But every now and then, a guitar comes along I fall in love with the shape, and no matter what I think I can do to make it better, I just can't improve on it. And the Milton is one of those guitars. I tried to give it my own twist many times, but each time I tried, I just detracted from it. So, with permission from Mike at Ingold Audio Designs, who's our guest, I recreated the Milton to be built using a 3D print. So, welcoming our guest, Mike from Ingold Guitars.
Thanks,
Mike.
Hi there.
How does it feel having someone wanting to make a copy of your guitar? They're that inspired, like they want to do that.
Well, Ray was really kind in all of our communications leading up to him building the guitar, and I mean it's 100% flattering. Ray's been such a nice guy to work with, and you know, it was a cool process to watch somebody else kind of take on, you know, my project and make it their own too.
Fantastic. So look, we'll share some pictures of that in a minute, but first, Mike, where are you actually based?
I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Fantastic. And I think, as always, we want to look at your guitar designs and talk about them and talk about you and Ray and think of many things that builders might want to consider that we can have a discussion about. But before that, I want to find a bit more about your journey into guitar building, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah.
When did guitars first come into your life?
The first guitar that I received, I think I was 12 years old, and I got it from my mom. She had gotten it as a gift when she was in college from a college boyfriend, and it just sat in a closet for many, many years. And I think I heard Nirvana for the first time in '91, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I know I want to do that. And I asked my mom for a guitar, and she's like, I have this thing in a closet. And it turned out it was a Madeira A30. Madeira was a Japanese subsidiary of Guild in the 70s. So much later, I did some more research on the guitar. It's a 1972 Japanese built Guild guitar, and it's lovely. I still play it every day. And then, once I started playing, I was hooked. So I started playing when I was about 12, and then in my 20s, I played in many bands. I was living in West Michigan at the time, and really just out of necessity, being poor and breaking guitars and amps all the time, I started repairing and modifying my own stuff, and slowly over the years gained some knowledge. And professionally, I've worked in wood shops my whole adult life. So those two things eventually wed, and Ingold Guitars was born a few years ago.
Fantastic. So just before I share your website so we can see some images, and if people are listening on the audio, there'll be links to Mike's websites in the description. What were you doing in wood shops then as a professional before the guitars?
So I have a terminal degree in the fine arts in sculpture. And so all through my undergraduate and graduate degree, I worked as the part-time woodshop assistant. And then when I finished my master's degree, I got a job working for the University of Tampa a couple of years later, where I was a professor teaching art and design, and I also ran their fabrication studios for the sculpture department. So I did that at UT for 12 years, and then eventually decided to have a full-on midlife crisis and start a guitar company instead.
I definitely want to get into how having an art degree, sculpture degree, and having worked in a university like that affects how you do the design. My background is also I studied sculpture and still do a bit of teaching at the university that I studied at, but I just do 2 weeks a year in the summer, so it's not really a proper career there anymore. I like to still have my hand in the art world, but I think about you, I never enjoyed being part of the art world, because I felt like when I made an artwork to go on display, because I also had a job where I was talking to people about making artwork and looking at artwork and interpreting artwork, I always felt like my artwork wasn't as good as what I was looking at with other people. But when I make an instrument for someone, there are things that you can definitely measure to see the quality of it, and you're giving it to someone else to create their own art with it, their own music with it, and it feels more special to me doing that than something on the wall, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Before I decided to really go head on into the guitar world, I worked pretty hard at having a career in the fine arts, not just in teaching, but in galleries and stuff like that. And at a certain point, after doing it for a long time, I became a little disillusioned. I feel what you're saying about it being really difficult to measure success because the arts are so subjective. There are a lot of intangibles when it comes to trying to qualify what makes art good or worthwhile. And teaching in the arts, and I really enjoy having those conversations with my students. But at a certain point, I didn't feel that I was creatively getting what I wanted out of the fine art world, and I was more and more interested in the music world instead, and just kind of slowly made that transition.
Amazing. Let's look at some guitars. I'll just share your website for a moment, and then we can talk a bit more about the company. But the Milton, this guitar here, is the one that Ray particularly liked. Oh, hold on, it's opened in a new window. See if I can. Oh, well, this is proper technology issues here. I have to go a different window to show it. We're looking in a minute. But so here are some of the guitars. You can definitely see a connection between all the designs and how they fit together. How did you get to your first sort of design that you were building and deciding to produce en masse?
That's a really good question. The first guitar that I really made properly from start to finish myself was a pretty direct copy of a Music Man Albert Lee. I don't know if you folks are familiar with that model. I actually have it hanging over here. I just love that model of guitar. To me, it's one of the prettiest guitars that's ever been made. And that model itself, I think, is heavily influenced by some older Taisco Japanese 60s, like the shark fin. K4L is one of my favorite guitars of all time. And there's something about that aesthetic, like that big pointy upper horn and kind of minimalist approach to the rest of the shape. It's definitely a huge influence. I also have an absolute love affair with 1970s Gibsons, all the ones that nobody likes, the Marauder, the Gripper. They have a very small fan base. And those have big pick guards, which I absolutely love. And so all of those things kind of came together. And in the design period, I built several prototypes before really settling in on that Milton, and that was the first model that I did. And each of the prototypes got closer and closer until I finally felt like I had the shape that I wanted. And there's some subtle stuff, you know, moving around the lower horn to have access to the upper frets and changing some of the placement of the controls, you know, just to get it so that it felt ergonomic and comfortable to play. But yeah, it was just a long design process. And because I taught design, I love that part of the process. Iteration, just, you know, sitting in front of my computer with Adobe Illustrator open with hundreds of versions of this guitar body, all with subtle differences, until I find the one that really resonates with me.
That's so, Mike, I have so many questions there. I love the idea that you've got hundreds of iterations of things. I think that's just, for me, integral to doing any sort of design, is not settling, but trying everything out until you get there. But you mentioned the being inspired by Gibsons that have a very narrow fan base.
Mm-hmm.
So that implies that you weren't necessarily trying to make a guitar for mass market appeal. You're making it specifically for your own artistic tastes, really, there, and hoping in that right market.
Oh, I was not thinking about selling these at all in the beginning. I just wanted to build myself a guitar, and I built a few of them. I gave a couple to friends, and I was honestly completely surprised by the feedback that I was getting. People, both in person and online. I was posting some photos online and getting like a lot of feedback that I was not expecting whatsoever. And eventually, like, enough people were like, "Hey, can I buy one of these?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess so." So then I started a guitar company.
So how long ago are we talking about that you started the company?
The company formally launched in January of 23, but I was also still teaching at that time. So it started in January 23. I was teaching full-time still and kind of doing this in the evenings and on weekends. And then over that summer, it got very busy. And I actually, fall of 23 went to part-time at the university. And then January of 24 left the university altogether to build full-time. So it's only been really a year properly doing it full-time.
Incredible. And sorry, just looking at your instrument page, you've got the Milton, which you just mentioned was your first design.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Milton Junior, the Mildred, and then two bass versions, a Bruce and a Mildred bass.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask where the names come from.
They're all family names. So Milton was my grandfather. Mildred was my grandmother. Bruce was a great uncle. I wanted to name my son Bruce, but that was denied. So I named my bass Bruce.
What a great name for a bass.
It's funny, when I saw it, I automatically thought of Jack Bruce. I don't know why. Maybe bass and seeing the Bruce together.
Yeah, I love that.
So let's talk back about your design process and your iterations then, because I'm intrigued by how that worked. If you're designing in Illustrator, was most of the design work sort of finalized before you're physically making things?
Yeah. So when I first started, I would design everything in Illustrator, and before I had access to any real digital technology for fabrication, I would just print out my Illustrator drawings at scale, glue them onto a piece of MDF, very carefully make my templates, and build from there. So everything was really directly from the Illustrator file onto handmade templates, and then built with, like a router, like we all do, right? Then once I moved into this shop, I have a couple shop mates, and one of them had a laser cutter, so he was able to laser cut me templates, which made that process a lot faster. So I could have him print or cut a template for me, try something out, and then if I didn't like it, make a modification, cut a new template, and that was really fast. And then I recently upgraded and got a CNC, and holy cow, has that made things fast. Now I can go directly from the computer to the CNC, and it's really made this process a lot faster.
And then can I ask a bit about as they exist now? Because I noticed, for example, on the Bruce one, looking at the web page that describes it, there's choices that someone can make when they're purchasing it, which include changing the scale length. Mm-hmm. So presumably, is that true on all of the instruments that really just this one that you can do the scale length change on?
So it's only the Bruce, and it's really a misnomer. The short scale length Bruce is a completely different instrument. The bridge is in a different place. The pickups are in a different place. The pick guard is a slightly different shape. I only offer it because I had a very good friend of mine and former bandmate who requested a short scale version of the Bruce. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll do that for you. And then once I had made all the files for it, I was like, I may as well offer it. But it's not as simple as just switching out the neck on that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I assumed there'd be something magical happening to get a different scale length neck on, keep the body shape the same.
Yeah.
So just for people that are listening, for example, when you are buying a guitar or this Bruce, because I've got to open the Bruce bass, you've got the scale length options. There's choices of different woods, alder, mahogany, black walnut, maple, colors for the back, whether it's going to be different, headstock coloring, changing the fretboard, the inlays. So you've got different types of dots or blocks you can put in, the hardware finishes. So there's quite a variety. It's not like just buying, this is what it's going to look like. You've got all that thing that can kind of customize it, make it your own, which is something I appreciate, that when big factories are making guitars, they'll do a range of them. Mm-hmm. There's sometimes you look at a guitar and I think, I like that model, but I just want these slight things changed. And that's one of the great things I think about buying from boutique builders that you can't get necessarily from a more mainstream company, is those small choices and things.
Yeah, I love the idea that a customer can have a guitar that's really theirs, and it may, in some cases, be the only version of that guitar that exists, and never see that colorway again, or, that combination of woods. And I think as a guitar player myself, I know how much I associate my playing with a particular instrument, and it can at times become even an extension of your musical identity. So to really be able to make it your own, I think can be a special experience for a player.
Hey, Mike, how long does it take to build one of these instruments for a customer who's customized it on your website and then ship
That's
it?
That's a great question. I get asked that all the time, and the honest answer is I don't know, because I'm never just building one guitar, and I've never had the luxury of just building one guitar. When I was building single instruments, I was also working full time, so it would take a couple months because I was just doing it evenings and weekends. And by the time I transitioned to building full time, I'm never building just one guitar. I have 5 in process. So the honest answer is I have no idea how long it takes to build a guitar. I have a business partner now, and he's like, dude, we have to figure out how long it takes to build a guitar to see if we're actually making money. And I was like, I don't know how to figure this out.
Yeah.
I think it's almost pretty safe to say, though, that if you did actually work out the amount of time and hours put in versus what your time is worth and all that, the answer is no, you're not.
No. I always think of billing skilled labor, right? What do you charge? What does a plumber charge? What does an electrician charge? And the answer is usually between $50 and $100 an hour, which is good. That's what skilled labor should be. There's no way that's what I'm making.
That's definitely one of the things that we want to talk about. I even noticed on your website, I was looking at your guitars just now. I know you've got a sale on. I often feel like the price that feels like a really good price, your instruments, to me. If not, maybe underpriced. But then getting back to what we were talking about before about the art world, one of the things I hated about the art world was trying to sell your wares, trying to sell your instruments. And I've had a lot of discussions recently in this country, so I don't know what it's like in America, but for boutique builders struggling to sell their instruments, struggling to justify a price that's even under £2,000 for a guitar that is hand built, that has taken that long, that is potentially, as you're saying, Mike, with the choice of woods being offered to the customer, a one-off in many ways, and people just still can't justify paying for it. It's not that they don't have the money. If they have the money, they're saying, well, I could get a Gibson for this price.
Yeah, I think being a boutique builder, that's the most challenging thing. Finding a price point where you feel like you're being compensated correctly for your time building the instrument, but also a price point that's going to attract a customer base. And especially when you're first starting out, you're competing with known brands, known commodities. And, my price structure, excuse me, initially was to think I want to be able to compete with American Gibsons and American Fenders, like that price range. And the truth is the prices are going to have to go up because I'm not making enough money to do it. But it's a boutique instrument. It has to be a labor of love because you're certainly not going to get rich doing it.
No, as Tornelli Guitars have just put in the chat, a guitar is what one person is willing to pay for it. My issue is, how do we find that one person?
If you find out, please let me know.
Yeah. Please do.
Obviously, you mentioned early on you had people reaching out, having seen your designs on Instagram or your guitars on Instagram, asking about it. Is that still a main source of sales for you?
Actually, it's Reddit. I posted a picture of one of the early prototypes that I built in maybe 21 or 22, and I just posted it in a guitar subreddit, and it blew up. It was like made the front page of Reddit, and I was completely blown away by this. And I got all these messages of people asking if I was selling them. And I was like, oh no, I just built this for myself. And then because I really enjoyed the process, I just built another one for myself again. I ended up giving the first one to a friend, and I posted it again. And again, it blew up on Reddit, and enough people were like, dude, I want to buy one of your guitars. I was like, all right, yeah, let's do it.
Amazing. Maybe Reddit's the secret space.
I'll tell you, for my marketing, Reddit is the way. That's where I've definitely gotten, I think, most of my sales is through Reddit.
That's interesting.
The vast number of sales and customers that I've had from Reddit as well. And the funny part is that, when you're doing this, and Mike, you'll notice yourself, most of the places you show your work, you're not advertising because you're not allowed to. You can't. It's just like, hey, this is what I made. And then you get the questions of, where do I get it?
Yeah. No, I'll just put a note up there to say, check out the samples page on your website, because there's some beautiful playing on there, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
And it really does show the tone of the guitar, which is fantastic. I don't know what sort of amps you've used on some of those tracks, especially the ones where it's just you playing the guitar.
Oh yeah, the ones that I recorded or ones of me playing live?
Well, I do like your recordings. Actually, that EP you produced, really nice. But yeah, the ones down at the bottom of the page there, where I think you've got a Milton Red Panda context one down the bottom there, really nice. Some lovely guitar playing.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that, Dave. Very kind of you to say. I think at the very bottom, the one where I'm playing the Mildred there that was recorded with a Fender Princeton. And then the one in the green sweatshirt there in the shop, which amp was that? Oh, I have a Frenzel. I don't know if you folks are familiar with Frenzel amps. It's a small builder in Texas. Jim Frenzel makes really nice boutique amps, hand wired, everything at very affordable prices. I bought one of those a few years ago. It's a great amp.
Yeah, beautiful tone.
Let me see if I can play one. Sometimes the sound doesn't go through properly. Are people hearing that?
I can hear it.
Yep.
Oh, brilliant. I'll keep it going then.
Well, I was going to say, try that Red Panda one, yeah. Lovely. That's lovely. I mean, it doesn't quite do it the justice if you go on the website, but that is really brilliant.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean that's always the thing, isn't it? About when I see people at guitar shows in the UK, small boutique builders trying to sell their guitars. One of the things about guitar show is someone can physically pick up your instrument and they can play it. But when you're buying online, it's the matter of it's the visuals or a sound demo like that. But it's interesting how people, if they feel they can trust the builder, will know they're going to get a quality instrument from it. But I always find it odd that people buy instruments online. But that's how we do it. I can't remember the last time I bought an instrument where I tried it out first.
Oh, really? It's so funny. Even though I sell guitars purely online, I have a couple of retailers here in Tampa that carry them. But I've never bought a guitar online. I've never bought a guitar that I didn't hold in my hands before.
I remember with my first 2 basses, trying out so many before I got the ones I liked. But then just getting used to the fact that I would, to get what I thought I wanted, I wasn't going to be able to try it out first because they weren't necessarily going to be available in the places I would go to.
Yeah, when it comes to buying an instrument, you go to a store and you play. However, having said that, I did buy one online, the last one, the Strandberg, but I kind of didn't really know what to expect, but I felt like I kind of knew what to expect.
Well, I think I don't know how nerdy customers are about guitars. I'm really nerdy about guitars. So reading the specs on a guitar, you can get a pretty fair approximation of what you think it's going to play like. If you understand sort of what scale length means, what a neck profile means, what kinds of pickups with what kinds of magnets. It's like, I have a pretty good idea of what this guitar should sound like and play like. But there's also so many intangibles, like fretwork is a really personal thing. So you never know what that's going to feel like until you're holding the guitar in your hands,
See, I've always been quite happy to buy like an electric guitar online because it's like, if the scale length is what I want, and it's, just jump between the 2 standards. Everything else in the guitar for me is basically changeable. If I don't like the tone, I can work with the, whether it be the pickups, I can work with the pots or the caps to get it to where I want it to be. If I don't like the neck or the frets, then, well, I just got to deal with that one. However, like when it comes to buying an acoustic, I go full opposite. One of the 12 strings that I have, I ended up at the factory, and I think I played with like 18 or 19 different. So it's a Cole Clark Fat Lady 2. I played 18 different, but the same Cole Clark Fat Lady 2s. Each one of them are completely different, but they're all made. Most of them were made from the same wood, but there was a difference. So, yeah, when it comes to an acoustic, I get nerdy. I go full nerd, and even then, I walk out holding the guitar, going, "In 10 years, this will sound totally different."
So most of my life, I was probably your average, bedroom player. I didn't have a lot of exposure to a whole lot of different instruments, and I also didn't know anything about the instrument really. So, there's a few that you've played, and you don't really have a good representation, of what is actually out there. But
Totally know what you mean. You that sort of links into that idea of Mike saying people will know what they want, or people will have an understanding by reading specs of what an instrument can be like. That's definitely true if people have played multiple instruments. But one of the things I've noticed with some clients, even when I've had a client who's a well-known guitarist, they will sometimes say, "I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that," and they maybe don't really know what it is. They've maybe read about it, or they've heard guitars got to have this to be good, or they sometimes but what they're asking is something else. So I've definitely learned now that when people are asking things or discussing things, to really try to clarify, as if I'm going to assume they're saying things but they have no knowledge about what it really is, even if they're experts in it, just to clarify. Because there was the one time when someone told me they definitely wanted a double octave on their, they wanted 24 frets. They needed a guitar with 24 frets. But what they actually meant is they needed a guitar that was 24, like a Gibson scale, 24 3/4 inches.
Oh.
Like Les Paul they were playing, but they're Les Paul.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, Paul had 24 frets on it. They thought that's what they wanted.
Wow.
But we later found out that actually, when I built them a 24 fret neck, it wasn't that they wanted. They wanted a smaller. They thought by having more frets, you had less space, but whatever. It was an obvious miscommunication from us both assuming we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah, no, that's I can sympathize with it. Something that I have found in the building guitars for people over the last couple of years, surprisingly, is how little people know about guitars. It's I've really been surprised by that.
Yeah, I think we've gotten to the point in guitar culture where we fetishize guitars now, and consumers can see a very pretty picture on Instagram and say, I want that. They don't need to know anything else. It's just they want that and they need that.
Yeah.
I swear I'm going to have a t-shirt made. Guitar people are dumb. I say it like every week. But I think about when I was a kid, I didn't know anything. And my second guitar I've had since, before 90, maybe 90. And it's a Yamaha. I have not, to this day, touched the setup on that thing ever. I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I pieced together how much you got to do to change strings. And even if you tried a different gauge, you probably needed a little bit of a setup change, and I didn't do it. I didn't. Your normal average guitar player doesn't know shit about guitar.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny that you said you've never touched the setup on that guitar. I mentioned that Madeira acoustic that I got when I was like 12. Same thing. It's like objectively really in bad shape, and I'm afraid to do anything to it because there's some magic to that. Like, it really needs a new bridge put on it. It really needs a refret. And I'm capable of doing all these things, but I'm like, I'm not touching that thing because there's some magic in the shittiness of it,
Funny you say that. The Yamaha, it was just set up really nice. It to this day, it plays awesome. The electronics, I'm starting to get short in there. But my very first guitar, there was a story on that thing. I'd sold it to a friend, and he sold it to a friend, and it went through several different people. This is in a different state, and it came back to a friend of mine and my brother's, and he had no idea where it had originally came from. Finally figured it out and sent it to me for Christmas a few years ago. So I decided I was going to take the hardware off, but it's a piece of shit. It was always a piece of shit. But I decided I was going to take the hardware off and build a new guitar, and it'd be like a reincarnation of my first guitar. And I went to take the bridge off, and the block had just crumbled. So I'm kind of afraid to even mess with that old Yamaha. Crazy.
I remember, I think I've said this before, but on my first electric guitar, at some point, I remember thinking that they put these saddles on all at different positions, so I just neatened it up. I didn't really know what was going on.
The last one, the last commission I did, the purple one for a friend's kid, he's like 15, 16. And I saw pictures on Facebook, like less than a month later, he had taken all the hardware off and he was cleaning it. Like, dude, it's like a fucking month old. Dude. And I texted his dad. I was like, I mean, if he needs help with setup, I can get this set back up. And he goes, well, he's fine. I'm like, yeah, is he? Because he had taken all the saddles off of the bridge, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, stuff like that is so surprising. I sold a guitar to a guy locally, I don't know, a year or two ago, and he was very happy about it. And then a month or two later, he emailed me, and he was like, hey, I restrung the guitar, and it's just not playing well. I think I need a new setup. And I was like, yeah, bring it in. I'll take care of it for you. And he had strung the strings over top of the string tree rather than under the string tree. And he was like, I don't know, man. Like the E and B string are just really doing something weird. This is a guy who's like a really good guitar player, you know? And I was totally caught off guard.
This is why professionals have roadies and guitar techs.
Yeah.
They don't shit. Just hand me something magical, and yeah, it's the guitar techs in the back that are the nerds that know and care.
I mean, I often think that you don't need to know all these things to be able to play the guitar.
Exactly.
But knowing them surely would change the way you play a bit, or help you understand it a bit differently. But maybe not. But also, when you see someone taking apart the guitar you've made and pulling apart the saddles, I think that's a great thing to see in a teenager, because it shows that they're exploring things and interested in how it works. And they obviously passionate about it, that they want to keep it that clean. And maybe that's a future builder over there, or someone that's going to learn a bit more about how it works. Of course, it could be someone that puts it all back together and is so disappointed they never play again. But I always think that taking things apart leads to kind of curious minds.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but when I saw it, my brain immediately went, "What?" Because I know he's not going to get it put back right. I know. Tell me he at least put those saddles back on in the same order. There's a chance in hell that the setup is not that far off.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to talk more about building and the process of all of that in a minute, but I just want to share one more time share for the first time the post that I read out at the beginning that was Ray's 3D print. Because I'd like to hear from both of you. What was the process then, Ray, of, I appreciate when you're doing more well-known designs like a telly or something like that, presumably you can start with a template just online. But how did you go about converting an instrument into a 3D print?
So it's not a difficult process when you kind of got your thing down. But before we get into that, I'd just like to point out, Daniel, if you do notice on that picture, all the saddles are perfectly in a line.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did not to say.
Now, yeah.
I think from memory at that point, I hadn't even wired the guitar completely. I was basically just throw it all together, get the strings on, and take some pictures of it, and then sort out the wiring later. I think, or I just hadn't done the setup. But ultimately, what I did with this one was I knew that it was going to be 25.5-inch scale. I knew that I wanted a Telecaster style neck on it. So I essentially started with a Telecaster template. Then using photos from Reddit that Mike had put up, I was able to basically sketch out the general shape of everything. And then scale the size to drop over the top of a telly body where the neck width in the photos matched the neck width of my template. So it would actually be interesting to see like just how close I came with some of those measurements.
It's funny, just looking at the photo, I can see some small differences, like just because I'm so familiar with that shape. And it's just some subtle things where I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I imagine there's no difference you would have to make for 3D printing for something like that. It's just how you've made it is slightly different, not a process-based thing. So what were the sort of conversations you were having, or did you basically just ask Mike and then you went and did it, or was there a back and forth at all?
Pretty much that was it. It was, hey, this lobby work, this is what I want to do. And on top of that, I wanted to clarify what my intentions were first, because like as we all know, like I make these models and these designs and I sell them. But if I was to do that with this guitar, this is the only guitar that I've printed that you can't buy the model, you can't get the files for it to print, because well. That's just flat out theft, basically.
Yeah.
See, I find that interesting. I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, so don't have to answer this. But obviously, from what Mike's saying, you felt okay about that process happening, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it was just the way that Ray approached me about it. So Ray and I think in the group chat with you, we had kind of talked, or maybe it was just Ray and I had talked about it. I think during the build process and after Ray had completed the guitar, we talked about how there have people online who will just steal your designs. And it's happened to me before where somebody was like, I really like that guitar, mate. I'm just going to make that for myself. And it's like, oh, all right. Okay. But Ray was right. Yeah. But Ray was really cool about it. Like it messaged me it was on Reddit, wasn't it, Ray?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Messaged me on Reddit and was just like, hey man, I really love your designs. Explained what he does with 3D printing, showed me some of his guitars. And he was like, would you be okay if I made a shape like yours? And I didn't want to sell it. I just really love the shape. And it felt like, I mean, it just was really nice. Ray's a nice guy and asked in a really nice and flattering way. How could I say no, you know?
That's good.
I mean, on the same hand, man, if I was going to be a dick about it, you weren't going to say yes.
Right, but you didn't have to ask at all. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's what Daniel's getting at. You could have just done it, and I wouldn't have known unless I saw photos of it posted online or something. You know?
Yeah, and that's really, really true. But you know, like as a small time, I guess I'm a builder. There was no way that I could honestly sit there and do that and feel okay about it. And you know, within the collective, there's a number of guys who have created some absolutely amazing guitars, and a lot of them are using original designs. And I've unfortunately had other people come to me and ask me, hey, you know that one of so and so's, can you model that for me? I'm like, no, can't do it. No. You know, it's not that hard. I'm like, I know it's not that hard, and yes, I can. I just won't. You know, it's just not right, man.
Yeah, no. Well, there's a lot of discussion on YouTube at the moment with Gibson and patent designs, and I've been watching a lot of people discussing it. And I'd love to get someone on that's an expert in the future to talk on this show about how that works and how you keep a patent for your design, like Fender haven't really in America got for their design, so that's why they're so mass produced. And then some things become just part of the consciousness of this is what a guitar looks like. That's why we're doing it. But all those sort of, when someone's making something unique that is their artwork that they are selling, you on one hand you don't want people stealing your design, but on one other hand, you want your design to be so inspiring that someone wants to have that design, and not everyone can afford to buy one. And I kind of understand the people making it. What bugs me is, like, there's one particular guitar I've got where someone had for a number of years had commented whenever I put one up online about how much they liked it. And then one time they just said, do you mind? I can't afford one. I've never been able to afford one. Can I make one? I was like, sure, that's fine. We've been talking for ages. It's fine. And then we've got a new member to the channel where every guitar has a story. So thank you for your support. They put up a video. They go to guitar shows and interview people at guitar shows about their guitars. Really interesting concept. And they had one of my guitars there, and they sent me a link to it. But it wasn't my guitar. It was the one that this guy had made, and he sold it on. And I felt a little bit annoyed that we'd had that relationship like you and Ray are talking about, or where it felt like I was helping them, they were supporting me, and there was sort of something mutual going on, and then they presumably made money out of it, and I didn't. So that felt a bit dishonest in some ways. That might not be the full story. I might miss something, but yeah, it's a shame. When
it's always hard to tell, but it's the only story that you can really work with, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like that person, if there's a different version of the story, could have communicated that to you. And again, what was great about working with Ray was it was full transparent communication. And I think that was key. And, and Ray's a person with integrity. So after speaking with Ray for a little bit, it's like, oh, this seems like a pretty reasonable person. I'd put some faith and trust into him. But, hopefully doesn't happen. That's a tough one, man. To have a person sell a good copy of a guitar that they made of your design, that's rough.
It seems like the approach that Ray did was the right way. Like, it's all built on an honor system. Like, that's all we have. Like, we can't afford patents and trademarks. They're expensive, right? Only Gibson can do something like that and can enforce something like that. So this honor system has to start somewhere. It's got to start here. And it's through this collective that we kind of just spread the word saying, hey, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Right? Do things the right way.
Yeah. Well, see, and that was the thing. So when I contacted Mike about it, it was I made sure that, like, I had to make sure that, you know, Mike knew why he could trust me, you know, to not just sell this thing off. And so I basically outlined, you know, like, my intentions. I want the guitar. Simple. That's what it was. I want the guitar. I'm not in a position to be able to get one. But I don't intend to sell it. But you can be damn sure I'm going to post up pictures of it everywhere I go. And to the best of my knowledge, I've stuck true to my word, where everywhere there is a picture of the tribute, which is behind me here, there is a link to either one of Mike's socials or his website or just anything. And, you know, like, I also make a note in there that, hey, look, I actually have, you know, Mike's permission to do this. And, you know, if you really like it, head on over, check it out. You know, because I made it because it's an absolutely amazing guitar. You know, go get your own.
And credit to Ray, this was all him. Like, he came at me and it wasn't me requesting, I need you to do all these things, like, always mention me and all that. Ray was like, hey, I will do all these things. It was really like Ray went out of his way to make me feel comfortable with the process. So all credit to Ray on this.
And Mike, do you have a 3D printer?
No, I do not. I'm not familiar with 3D printing process whatsoever. And that was another part of the thing that intrigued me, was that Ray has a lot of knowledge in that area that I do not. And so to see some designs of mine translated to a media that I'm unfamiliar with, I had genuine curiosity about it as well. And I was messaging Ray about that process of, like, puzzle piecing things together. I mean, what Ray does is guitar building, no doubt, but it's a type of guitar building that I'm completely unfamiliar with, and I think it's super cool.
If anyone is interested, in 2 weeks' time, we're having a little plug here, a 3D printing special. And we've talked about 3D printing quite a lot on the show, but hopefully it's going to be a bit of a deep dive. So people like me who are new to it, or people that don't really know much about it, will still get something from it. But hopefully it'll be just geeky enough for all those real 3D printing people to get loads out of it as well. But yeah, it's a whole new world. And I think, potentially, a world that's going to blow up or expand in many ways. While we're talking about designs, it was hanging on my wall next to me. One of the first things I ever made was this. So it's a bass guitar made out of a toy Millennium Falcon. Now, I have a vague memory that when I did it, I hadn't seen anything like it before. But whilst I was making it, I saw a meme where someone had literally taken a toy and photoshopped a guitar on it. But then it turns out loads of people have done this, and you can even track back the first luthier that did it with Star Wars toys. So it's not necessarily an idea that is that original. Someone had it originally, but it turns out loads of people have had it. But I had someone contact me and say, I like what you're doing. It's great. I've been doing them as well. You do yours a bit differently, and I like what you do. It's a bit better than mine. But I've just taken out a patent on it, and it's all gone through, so you need to stop making them. And take any that you've got online, and we'd already had a discussion about the fact that we weren't the first people to do it, because we've been talking for a few months. We weren't the first people to do it, and someone else had. You could track back who the first person was, but he took out the
patent the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, that seems crazy.
Yeah, it does.
No, they patent a guitar in the shape of a spaceship toy. So, but the patent has an image on it. So he sent me all the paperwork. At that point, I didn't care because I was just making them for fun. It was before
That's wild
thing, but it just seemed like such a I understand taking a patent out on your own thing, but when you take out patent on other people, and because of my love of that sort of thing, I'm also interested in Warhammer and miniature painting. I mean, there's a whole company that have been taking out patents on things that are Warhammer adjacent, like a particular machine that you clean your brushes with, and particular ways that you can roll out and print mats to stand your characters on. Both of those things were invented by certain people, but they didn't take the patent out in America and the UK and Europe, and someone else has, and now that company has a patent to it, and they get all the money from it, not the original person that made it. And they've stopped the people that made them selling them on their own sites. And there's something about that dishonesty that I find really upsetting about the world in many ways.
This is the part that really, really bothers me about patents. So coming from additive manufacturing and 3D printing, patenting is an area that I need to be versed in to an extent. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm constantly dealing with customers who have new ideas, new concepts, and new inventions, and needing to make it. And half of my job is finding the right process and the right machine to do that for them. And you're talking about, that you can track back the very first guy that made a Millennium Falcon guitar, yet someone else owns the patent for it. So the part that really, really bothers me is that, especially with the US Patent Office has a whole team dedicated to basically looking at the patent and going back and going, okay, it's an original idea. No one else seems to have done it. They do their research. They look back to see if anybody else has done it. And if they can't find anything, then the person gets their patent. However,
Ray, sorry to interrupt. Do you mean they look back through past patents? Not necessarily someone else has made it, but they haven't taken out a patent on it.
No. In theory, they should be going back and basically doing a search, not just through the patents, just looking online and things like that. And it's supposed that they do this search. Yet, there's so often so many things where it then becomes very, very clear that there is prior art involved. So in the instance of this Falcon base, you can very easily prove that this person didn't have an original concept or design, and in fact that this other person did. The problem then becomes that they've already got the patent. So that original person then has to come up with the funds and the time and the energy to actually fight the patent. The onus is on them to disprove the first person's patent.
Yeah.
Even though, the whole US Patent Office was supposed to have done that in the first place. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't get overturned.
Well, the government
patents are not just about like the idea, right? It's about the manufacturing process too. You have to show how you can build this thing. You can't just like patent rocket pants. You have to like show how you build rocket pants, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get inspired in a lot of ways. Maybe they go to Instagram for inspiration for guitar building. I go to the US Patent Office website. It's so inspiring to go in there and do a search for just any little guitar building thing. And there's so many crazy ideas on there to get inspired by. But I totally recommend it. I just actually did some search on Ken Parker's patents. Just amazing stuff. Amazing. Totally recommend it. That's all I have to say.
I spent a good couple of weeks on Google Patents just going through, looking at anything I could find guitar related, thinking I could make a YouTube series on talking about some of the wacky designs that are out there. There's so much. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, I don't want to put here nothing, but as far as I know, I still have the one and only ice cream sandwich guitar in the world.
Yeah.
And we're all there to back you up.
Just put it out there. It's a good reason you're the only one.
You don't have to worry about somebody trying to copy it.
Ty's just put in the comments, Ty from Shock the Fox, more than one person has come after me saying I stole their logo and registered their trademark, which I find crazy because I remember when Ty was on, we were talking about where Shock the Fox came from because it seems like such a random name. So
I'm fanboying a little bit that Shock the Fox is in the comments. I love that. I love the Shock the Fox's Instagram. I look at it almost every day.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's really great. He comes on regularly just to check that how many of us have got beards. That's all.
I don't know. He's not looking.
Speaking about like copying builds, though, I was going to call myself out. I mentioned earlier the first guitar that I built myself from scratch is a copy of Albert Lee. This is it,
Right?
and it's like a pretty direct copy of a Music Man design with a different circuit in it. But I just loved that shape so much, and I couldn't afford one. And I was like, I'll just make my own. I never sold it. I have no intention of selling it. It just hangs on my wall because I've like scavenged it for parts many times over. But you know, as we were talking about earlier, if I would feel really terrible, just the integrity thing, I would feel bad if I used somebody else's design and tried to sell it as my own. Some people don't have that kind of conscience, but
hey, we were talking off air. Listen, I'm not going to go down this tangent, but we were talking off air about something that is connected, about people copywriting music on YouTube, and we're talking about guitar players. Maybe sometimes, like Paul Davids he'd recorded some instrumental stuff for people to use in their own tracks, and then discovering people were monetizing basically his content in their tracks and things, and not registering him for it. So he was getting copyright claims, but people fraudulently just deliberately making channels that take control of copyright from other people. It's a world. If people can make money from it, someone's going to do it. It doesn't have to be legal to do.
No.
So look, changing the point, we've had on recently someone that built a guitar for Bowling for Soup. We've had someone doing it for Alien Ant Farm, and then I noticed on your feed, Mike, you've just done one for Fallout Boy.
yeah, that was really cool.
Classic 90s link. Tell us a bit about that one.
It was so random. I built that green guitar, and I had posted it online, and that one was not built for a client. It was a rare case where I just built one for myself, and I posted it online for sale, and it sold like 5 seconds later. And at the time I was waiting for cases to get in. So I emailed the buyer and I said, hey, just FYI, my cases are on back order. So it's going to be a week or two before I can ship. And the buyer messaged me back and was like, yeah, no problem. Not in a rush or anything. And he's like, actually, I wanted to ask you if you could make some modifications to it for me. And I was like, yeah, I'd be happy to. He's like, if you can't do it, I can have my guitar tech do it. And a little alarm bell went off and I was like, you have a guitar tech? And then I Googled his name and it was like, Patrick Stump, lead singer of Fall Out Boy. And I was like, well, that can't be right. And I just kept Googling Patrick Stump. And then after he and I had emailed 5 or 6 times, I was like, hey, man, are you Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy? And he's like, yeah, that's me. And I was like, oh, that's wild. You know, I had no idea.
That's cool. That's just great when you know that somebody's seen your instrument and wants it.
Yeah, it was a pretty surreal moment. I remember I was sitting in bed. It was like a Saturday, and I had Googled him, and I was sitting next to my wife, and I was like, I think I just sold a guitar to Fall Out Boy. And she looked at me, and she's like, that can't be right. That didn't happen.
Have some faith, honey.
That's awesome.
But he was a super nice guy to work with. I did a couple small modifications. He wanted a kill switch on it, and wanted a Hipshot drop D tuner installed on it. And I think there was something else in the circuit that he wanted modified. But I did those and shipped it off. And super gracious guy, super friendly. And he's like, yeah, he got it. And I was like, are you happy? He's like, I'm more than happy. He's like, I'm having my tech just do a setup for me. And then he's headed on tour for the last several months.
Excellent.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I won't put the sound on for copyright reasons, but also apparently I put the sound on before it was really loud. Last week when I shared sound, it was really quiet, but apparently it was really loud according to the live chat. Oh, by the way, if anyone's listening or in the future, if you want to join us, we do this every week on YouTube Live, so people join in the chat. So if you're there listening and you want to get more involved, please do it that way. So I just want to share as well then actually some more pictures, if that's right, Mike. Because when I was showing the website, it was mainly the kind of wood finishes. But I love these finishes as well. Do you do those in-house?
Yeah, I actually just started working with a paint person. I was doing all the finishing myself, and it's so labor intensive. I'm sure you guys are aware. Like, finish is the most labor intensive part of guitar building. And this was a bass I actually made for Adam Devonshire of the band Idols. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Idols.
Oh, I love Idols.
Yeah, super nice guy to work with as well. I got to deliver it to him by hand at a show when they came through Florida, and he gave me backstage passes. It was a really cool experience. But he had initially requested, he wanted like a mustard yellow. And then just like a week before I was supposed to deliver the guitar, he's like, actually, mate, can we change it to British Racing Green? And I was like, yeah, I'll do my best. So that I was like many late nights to get that one done on time to deliver to the show.
It's got a great finish, though.
I absolutely love your pickguard designs. Those pickguards are just phenomenal.
Thank you.
You know, I think I would lead every conversation with I mean, we're an hour in to find out you know Fall Out Boy has one of your guitars. I'd be standing in line and what name should I put on the cover? Scott, the maker of guitars for Fall Out Boy. What'd you have for breakfast? Well, I built a guitar for Fall Out Boy and I had bacon and eggs. I would break that out at every opportunity. It's crazy.
It was actually the pickguard design that first caught my eye with the Milton.
Actually,
That whole split.
The split pickguard is proven to be like the signature thing. People always ask me about the split pickguard design on the Milton in particular. I don't remember. Oh, I do remember how I arrived at that. I bought a used Ibanez Tallman bass years ago, and I bought it at Guitar Center for like $100. I just needed a bass around for home recording, and when I just decided to refinish it one day. It was a really ugly color and really poorly finished from the factory. And I was like, I'll just refinish it. And I had it in the shop. And while I had it all apart, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll customize it a little bit. And I decided to make myself a new pickguard for it. And I messed up when I was making the pickguard. Like I just totally beefed it. And I didn't have enough pickguard material to build a new pickguard. So I just from scrap made a second piece to the pickguard. And again, it was one of those things that was almost an accident. And I had to find a solution at the last minute that looked like it was on purpose. And when I posted a picture of that bass online, again, people were like, oh my God, the split pickguard, that's the coolest thing ever. And I was like, oh, really? It was a happy accident. But then I integrated it into the future designs that I was working on.
I feel your way of working is very much like when I'm working with students in the art world, talking about how to work through their designs and the things they're making, and embracing all those little accidents and seeing what you're forced to do through something going wrong to be creative.
I mean, there's probably a million platitudes that talk about when you have less resources, you are forced to make more interesting and creative choices. And when I was teaching art full time, that was definitely something that I prescribed to, like always talking to my students about when you have a limited set of choices you can make, it actually forces you to think much harder about the choices. And I think that's really important in any creative process.
Absolutely.
It works really well though, doesn't it? Because it really emphasizes the angle of that upper horn there, doesn't it? All those lines going down. It just, it really looks great. Are you using a rotary switch there to select pickups, by the way?
It's actually a blend knob. It's a split pot, and then it basically is a pan knob. It's got a detent in the center. So if you move it toward the upper horn, it goes to your neck pickup. And if you move it towards the bridge, it goes to your bridge pickup.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
So the split pickguard is actually something, and I think you've noticed this, Mike, is something that I've actually begun to adopt in some of my own designs. And again, it's actually come out of necessity. So, like I'm 3D printing guitars, but I can't 3D print, for instance, like on that printer back there, a Stratocaster pickguard in one piece. The build volume's just not quite big enough. So then when I was doing the Meteora just there, it's just like, well, shit, how am I going to do this? And it just suddenly, just sort of, while spinning in my chair in the office, my eyes landed on the Milton, the Tribute. I was like, that's how I'm going to do that. And consequently, so now the Meteora has a split guard. There's another guitar I'm working on that will probably end up with a split pick guard as well.
That's really interesting. I love the way you've been doing the split pick guards, but it hadn't occurred to me that part of it's a practical reason for physically the space.
I can't anything on the printer.
Ironically, for me, it's totally impractical. The wiring process for doing a Milton with the split pickguard is an absolute pain in the ass because of the split pickguard.
I did notice this.
Hey, so Mike, a few other questions then. I can see from these gorgeous photos we've got online that there's other things in the case. What are your sort of case candy things that you supply when someone's buying from you?
Oh yeah, I have a couple stickers that I got made, and then koozies for cold beverages, and I also have some T-shirts that I sell on occasion. But every guitar and some picks. Do you know how expensive it is to get picks made? I was so surprised at that. Like, of all the merch, I was like, holy cow. Like, I thought picks would be a couple cents each, and it's like, no, they're a couple dollars each. I'm like, holy cow.
We're in the wrong industry.
I know. But yeah, I throw in a pack with a couple stickers, a couple picks, and a can koozie.
Nice. And one thing that I'm interested in how you describe your guitars yourself, but people are just listening. Is there a way you might describe the sort of look or the feel of your instruments, the aesthetic?
The aesthetic is definitely sort of retro futurism. So the designs that I pull from, I really love 70s Japanese guitars, Taisco in particular, but any of their subsidiaries, Silvertone and K, all of those guitars I think are so cool looking. And then just my personal design interest, I love retro futurism. I think it's really it makes me happy. I've had people say a lot like, your guitar looks like it should have been on the Jetsons. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was going for, you know? I'm also a minimalist though. So it's like with that green guitar, you do the tortoise pick guard on this kind of like pea green, and it definitely feels like it walked right out of the 70s. Whereas like this most recent bass that I just made is gloss black with a matte black pick guard, and it's super minimalist. And I really love leaning into that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely.
I think one of the things that attracted me also was some of your color choices. You know, when I was talking to someone else about them, and it's just like, it's like this. It's an olive green guitar. You know, it's got like split tortoiseshell pick guards, and they just started screwing their nose up at the thought of it. It was just like, yeah, actually, that doesn't sound really attractive or anything like that. And then I'm just like, no, wait, and I pulled out my phone, and it's like, oh shit, that worked.
The design of that guitar in particular, the one that I sold to Patrick from Fallout Boy, again, just a happy accident. So that one is a laminated body, so it's a walnut top, maple center, walnut back, and then the green that's on top, it's Formica, and I don't think people realize that it's just Formica, straight up Formica.
Right.
And but that was one where I had this chunk of maple that was just a little too thin to build a body out of, and also a fully maple body would be pretty heavy. And then I had a couple pieces of walnut that had been cut off of like an 8/4 slab, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll make a top out of those someday. And I was like, oh, what if I did a top and a back out of walnut? Because it was just literally the scrap lumber that I had sitting in the shop. And then I had some of that green laying around because I had a customer like a year prior who wanted that color green specifically. And I was like, I'll never sell that color again. And then, so I just, I just put it all together. And the tortoiseshell pickguard was really a last minute choice. I was going to put a black pickguard on it. But again, it was like, went to my pickguard drawer and I was like, oh, I'm out of black. I do have tortoise. I guess I'll throw that on. And it was that moment when it all comes together. And I was like, oh, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because for someone who, when you were talking about your design iterations, it sounds like you went through so much to get like the final design, so many iterations till it was right. But yet when you're building, quite often it sounds like it's just by chance what happens to be here and what's available on the day that causes the combinations that you end up with.
There's definitely some happy accidents that happen in the last parts of a build. So knob choices, pick guard choice. It's just sometimes it's literally like what's right next to me, and then I'll hold it up and be like, hey, that will work, you know. I just have like a drawer full of like a lot of random knobs. I just bought a bunch of them. So when I'm doing the build at the end, I put like 6 different knobs on the guitar, and I'm like, it's going to be those today. But I will also say, I think that if you have a strong design aesthetic for the overall guitar, you can feel free to make more interesting choices with color and finish because the design will hold it together. If you had a really bizarre or unique body style that calls for a specific kind of finish, when I was in grad school, I took this seminar course on like basically image making, and I had to write this very long research paper on design aesthetics, and I did it on guitar design. And I ended up doing a survey of like a few hundred people, and I just showed them pictures of different guitars and asked them what kind of music each guitar was made for. And it was pretty amazing how good people were at understanding the design language of guitar and associating it with a specific kind of music. And so there are certain design languages that call for certain aesthetics when it comes to finishes because of their overall shape and what they are visually speak to being intended for. Whereas with my designs, I think that the nature of that shape, it lives in this nice space that looks familiar, but not too, it's different than a Fender, it's different than a Gibson, but it's not so different that it makes you think like, oh, that's a different thing. And so because it lives in that comfortable space, I think then I'm able to make a few more unique choices when it comes to the finishing, because that shape will kind of hold them together.
And on that note, Mike, so your customers who are buying your guitars, do you know what genre of music they typically play?
No, this is a great question. I've been asked this before too. I don't have a specific demographic. I mean, it's people who can afford the guitars is probably the demographic, but I've sold guitars to people in their 20s, people in their 50s, women, men. There's no specific genre of person that seems to be interested in them.
If it helps, I refer to mine as my yacht rock guitar.
That's great.
If I was going to go on a cruise as a traveling, as the band on the cruise ship, I would take that thing.
Okay.
Maybe that's the pattern you've added, though.
What's that?
Maybe it's partly the pattern that you've added to your surface of yours. Because I definitely feel like, and it's presumably because Jack White has a similar love of instruments, of the same sort of instruments that Mike's talking about, that it definitely feels like that kind of White Stripes sort of group of bands that were using the kind of 70s instruments and making that kind of music that Fall Out Boy to me fit in with as well in some ways. That is made for. But then at the same time, I can definitely see people playing jazz on these.
Yeah.
But then that maybe that's the 70s-ness to it that I'm related to. I don't know.
It's not out of the realm of possibility for country either. I mean, it's you never that's an artist with a warlock, but
Yeah.
it does have kind of a telly type of vibe to it too.
Yeah, when people ask me what style of guitar it is from a playability standpoint, I say it's basically a Telecaster, just a souped-up Telecaster.
Well, Telecaster can be used for everything. So there we go.
I mean, that's got to be the most universal guitar, right? Like you see Telecasters in every genre of music.
Yeah. I still passionately believe that the shape of the instrument does and the colors and everything affect the way you play psychologically, and you can feel different when you're playing different types of instruments. But at the core of it, doesn't really matter what instrument you're playing, you can basically get the sound you want.
Yeah.
Trying to picture Iron Maiden.
That's really, really true. I mean, for instance, again, like the tribute, it has an absolutely wild, overdriven tone to it. The amount of, like, honestly, I call it my yacht rock guitar. However, when I go to play, a bit of metal, that's the one that I grab. I don't grab that thing.
No.
That one with that pickup in it has this amazing jazz tone. It's got a lot of warmth and a lot of clarity. It just doesn't quite fit the picture.
No.
Now, I wonder if all the pointy guitar players that play on stage, when they're in the studio, what instruments they're playing.
That's a good question. I've lately fallen in love with pointy guitars. I know my next purchase is going to be like a high-end Jackson or Ibanez or something with a Floyd Rose, which is the antithesis of every interest in music and guitars I've ever had. I had a good friend who he now works as one of the lead designers for Jackson. He started working there a couple of years ago. And when he helped design I don't know if you're familiar with Jackson guitars. I'm not, except that my friend just told me all this. They just released an American line of soloists and dinkies, which they didn't have in the past. And he got the first shipment of prototype soloists in. And he's like, come over and play one of these. And they were like fluorescent pink and like Dayglow green, and I was like, God, that's ugly. And then I picked it up and started playing it. I was like, holy shit, this is an incredible guitar. And I was like, I gotta get a pointy guitar. These things are crazy. The neck's like this thick, you know. It's incredible.
Those are my two favorite colors: hot pink and like lime green, neon green.
But is that Andrew Knight by any chance?
Yeah, it is. You know Andrew?
Yeah, he's been on the show.
He's on the show.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So Andrew was a student of mine at UT, and he came into my shop and he was like, hey, can I build a guitar in here? And I was like, absolutely, as long as I can shadow you and watch you do it. And so when he was building a guitar in my shop, that's when I built this guitar. And then he got that job at Jackson. He and I remained friends after he left the university, and he got that job at Jackson. He was like, hey, I'm moving out to Arizona. And he's like, you're starting this guitar company. I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you want to buy my shop? And I basically bought all the equipment I own from Andrew.
Amazing.
Oh, God.
Full circle, Daniel.
We'll have to get him back on because he said he had that American range coming out. We said we had to talk to him when that's
They're phenomenal. Truly incredible. I mean, I got to play those prototypes and I was like, it's insane. Like, as a person, I've played like Telecasters and Les Pauls most of my life. And when I picked up that Jackson, I realized like, oh, I've never actually held a really nice metal guitar. Like, I've just never done it. And when I picked up that guitar, it's like, this is a completely different object. It's not anything like any guitar I've ever played before. And I was like, it's cool. It's way cooler than I thought it was going to be.
Well, I feel like, because I'm going to be starting to plan next year's guests soon. So I feel like you and Andrew need to be on together.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. All right. I'll get planning on that. And look, if anyone's watching or listening and you've got suggestions of people to get on or back on, do message me and let me know. I think it's good to get some guests on that have been on before so we can maybe focus less on their backstory and more on something more detailed and intricate and hone in on things like we can do with the 3D printing in a couple of weeks' time. And Mike, one thing we didn't ask then is there someone else in your shop with you? Did you say you work with other builders or someone else working for you?
So I share a shop space with two other builders, but they're not guitar builders. My shopmate Brian does a lot of signage and branding, and then my other shopmate John does like high-end custom furniture. So when I bought all of that equipment from Andrew, I was looking for a shop space, and I knew my friend John, we ran in the same social circles, and he's like, hey, we've been kind of thinking about adding a third person to our shop. And then the equipment that they owned sort of complemented the equipment that I owned. So we pooled our resources, and now it's like a 1,500 square foot shop space. And then I also have this side room, which is like a clean room that I work in.
That's excellent.
Cool deal.
Good.
I've just seen in the chat there's already some suggestions of people, so I'll just respond to that in a minute.
Wouldn't it be neat if we could give intro or Sully or?
I've asked Ben again, still haven't heard back. I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
Yeah.
If anyone else wants to ask him, please do.
Do you guys know Cower Guitars?
No.
K-A-U-R? I think it's K-A-U-R. No? Oh, super cool guitars. I talked to him, the main guy, I think his name is Doug Cower. Yeah, Doug. Super nice guy. I talked to him when I was at NAMM last year. He'd be a great person to have on, and his guitars are fantastic.
That sounds great. That's just put me on a whole other tangent. I want to get someone from NAMM on. I'm intrigued on how big things like that are organised and run.
Yeah, I'm doing NAMM in January. First time doing a booth, so I can come back after and let you know if it was totally worth it or totally a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. Right, sounds like we have a plan, Mike. 2 reasons to come back now. So thank you so much again for being here. And Dave, have a nice little break. We'll see you back when things are a bit warmer. Ray's back on in a couple of weeks to talk 3D design. And then next week, Mark, Scott, and myself are here with Owen, who's in the chat from Entropia Guitars, talking about what he's up to. So that'd be brilliant. I just want to say before we go, though, thank you to everyone that's become members to support the channel. All of that extra little money helps with all the costs of the streaming and putting the podcast together, etc. Really appreciate that. And if you are listening, what would be great as a way of supporting is just to share the podcast with anyone that you know that might be interested, or leave a comment for us, a review. All of those things are good, especially as the audio's only a few months old. Whereas we're in our second year with nearly up to the third year now with the stream.
Yeah.
Great. On that note, then, thank you once again, everyone, and see you all next week.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Awesome.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.